Hello, everybody, and welcome to Vinyl Power. That's right, the podcast where we talk about our love for vinyl records and share it with you. Join us each week as we bring you the latest in vinyl releases, what's in our vinyl collection, and wrap it up with epic vinyl. That's right here, each and every week, with your hosts, the Reverend Jeff Kelly and Kurt Harris. Once again, welcome to Vinyl Power. You know, it's funny. We just talked about it a week or two ago on the show. That thing you do about the one-hit wonders with
the Tom Hanks movie, right?
The Tom Hanks movie, yeah. And the intro song to this reminds me of the part that they were in the movie with Frank and Annette and the Jimmy Shirt Sacks and the Sharpshooters.
That's exactly right. It does, doesn't it?
It does. It reminds you so much of that. How much fun can it be? Hey, everybody, I am the Reverend Jeff Kelly, and over there is Kurt, your friendly neighborhood music man Harris, coming to you live here via Vinyl Power from North Carolina. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. There's no place I'd rather be on. Let's see. Heck, we're in February. It is
February already. 1st. February 2018. That's
Time
right,
is
man.
Moving along, isn't it?
Tomorrow is Groundhog Day. Somebody shoot that little bastard.
We've already knocked out a month of 2018, man. We are moving right along, and the music is following us. And
I don't remember much of January. I was pretty sick.
Yeah, January wasn't really, especially the start of January. It wasn't a very great month for me either.
Yeah, no. I was sick from Christmas time until, well, I'm still fighting it.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. Anyhow, people, we are here today to talk about vinyl records and dropping the needle and Blu-rays. Well, we'll figure that out here in a minute. But as usual, we talk about the release calendar, and I'm not even going to bring it up live because there's only two of them on it this week. Brian Fallon with Sleepwalkers and Franz Ferdinand with Always Ascending. That's what's coming out this week, people. Not a whole lot. A few next week and one on the 23rd. So February is kind of a crap month for record releases.
Yeah, that's not much at all, is it?
No, it is not. But I don't have all the sources because I'm sure there's other stuff coming out there. Speaking of things that are coming out there, let's figure out how this Blu-ray stuff works into vinyl. Kurt, talk to me, man. What you been playing this week?
Well, you know what? To switch it up a little bit, because our focus is vinyl records. Our focus is music, but our main focus is music on vinyl records. Yes, we might listen to FLAC files. We might listen to CDs. We might listen to music and however we may own it, use it, record it, download it, whatever. But you know what? I wanted to go off the track a little bit this week, and there was a reason for that. I happened to be going back and listening, and this was the first one I listened to, and I'll hold it a little closer since these aren't big like vinyl records, but this is actually King Crimson's In the Court of the Crimson King.
That's right.
And this is 1969, and for many people, this is known as the first real progressive record. And
I failed. I just became a poser. I so-called that by the wrong name. I feel like a tool.
And you know, one of the amazing things about these, and it's going to be the theme throughout the little group of Blu-rays. This one is actually on DVD audio, is what this is. So this is actually on a DVD audio disc. You can see it has 2 discs, and this is the remix. Has a nice little booklet that comes with it. This is the remix by Steven Wilson, and Steven Wilson wound up making a great reputation for himself for doing surround mixes from his own Porcupine Tree records, and he wound up having studios and bands come to him with their original master tapes to be remixed from the standard 2-channel stereo into 5.1, because of course these days so many people have 5.1 systems, and why not remix the music to take advantage of it? And I can say that these sound absolutely incredible. And the cool thing about that connects us to Vinyl Power is the fact that one of the things Steven does with these is he takes I guess he finds as good of an actual first pressing, like a first UK pressing of these records, and he does what's called a needle drop. And yes, you actually hear the needle drop onto the vinyl record. And yes, you are playing it through the digital format. So I know it's not exactly the same, but you do still get the original mix, the original everything played on a vinyl record, along with, like on this one, you get a lossless 5.1, a DTS 5.1. You get the 2009 stereo mix. You get CD bonus tracks and alternate takes, the lossless stereo, the needle drop, and a PCM stereo. So you get a lot for your money with these, and these roughly go for about usually between $17 and $25 a piece. So I wanted to say that first because that pretty much stands for all of these. So this was the first one I listened to this week, which was Court of the Crimson King. And if you haven't heard this, for me, it's my favorite.
I'm still trying to swing it in the wild. It's one that's on my list.
This is my favorite of all of the King Crimson records. Some of them just go out there a bit too much for me and just go really too far away from what I would call melody or music. And I understand what they're doing, but this one doesn't. This one really is a masterpiece. Well, they followed that. And like I said, I won't have to go through all the same thing again, but they followed that. Again, it's the Steven Wilson remix of In the Wake of Poseidon. And this is 1970. This also has the vocals of both of these have the vocals of Greg Lake. That's Emerson, Lake and Palmer, of course. He left, Greg Lake, the singer, left after this particular album and formed Emerson, Lake and Palmer, of course, with Keith Emerson and Carl Palmer. And so again, it's the exact same thing. It has, has the needle drop. So if you wanted to hear the vinyl, well, is it exactly the same as dropping the needle in your own record at home? No, but it is close and it does sound very good. But you also get the 5.1 mix and the various other mixes, studio outtakes, whatever, In the Wake of Poseidon, 1970. I'll tell you another thing that I should have said about these because on my show notes, I think it's interesting that Court of the Crimson King, the first one, actually went to number 5 in the US. That is really not bad for coming out of nowhere and being known as the first true progressive album because it was something people weren't used to. It was number 28 in the UK, and this one reached number 4 in the UK and number 31 in the US. So it's kind of interesting. They almost flip-flopped. But again, not really bad for music that really was kind of exploratory at the time, more than Pink Floyd. And I would just say that this one to me is not quite as good, but it follows heavily in the footsteps of Court of the Crimson King. I just like that one better. And then from there, we go to, well, I like these. I admit I like this much better. And these are actually on Blu-ray. And it's the same thing, but they are on Blu-ray. And he made them like little, this is different. This was a few years later, and they had figured out ways to make it more like you're opening a vinyl record, like a gatefold.
Right.
Like a gatefold record. And this is Yes, Fragile, which is from 1971 on Atlantic Records. It went to number 4 in the UK, only number 40 in the US. Also, the drummer on this was Bill Bruford. Well, at the end of the this is 1971, and after 1972, just a little tie-in here. Bill Bruford left Yes, the outstanding progressive drummer, to become the drummer for King Crimson. So just a little tie in there between the two. And you can see it comes with a nice little booklet. Now, one thing I have to say about this in particular, this is Fragile. For me, this is probably my favorite Yes album. My gosh, it's absolutely unbelievable. songs, and the Blu-ray itself is, and they even come in little sleeves. So they try to make it as much like the vinyl,
right? Like a vinyl experience as they can.
Right. And the thing is, with the 2 King Crimson records that are on disc, those are on DVD audio, which sound great. However, they do not compare to the Blu-ray lossless, completely lossless DTS HD Master Audio 5.1 that's on here. I put it this way. The best that my personal home system can sound is when I put on one of these. If I wanted to say to somebody, hey, these vinyl records sound great. Yeah, we're jamming. But do you want to hear the best that my system could possibly do, the best sound it could possibly make? Well, let's put on one of these and you'll hear it, because the sound here is absolutely spectacular. Steven does not use gimmicks. So he just moves the where he thinks it will give the best presentation. You know, the vocals are mainly going to come out of the center. They might move around a little bit. You might have a lot of the guitar coming out of the right front. A lot of the bass guitar might come out of the left front. You might have the reverb on the drums coming out of the rear speakers. And then the drums can move around the room or whatever. But he does not go for gimmicks. He goes for presentation. He wants to make it like, for him, he wants to put you, the listener, not so much just right in front of a stage, but almost just like you're sitting in the room with the band listening. And that's his approach to remixing these into 5.1. So here we have Fragile, 1971, yes, and probably my personal favorite Yes record. I absolutely love that one. And we move on from there. And again, this is the actual Yes album. I probably, if I like that one a hair more than this one, it's a hair. This is an incredible album. And it's the NSA. I don't need to repeat it all. It's the exact same thing. It's Blu-ray. You've got the needle drop. You've got the 5.1. It's the DTS master. An amazing band at the absolute height of their powers. And so that's basically what I was listening to this week. We did listen to some records. We always do. But yeah, it was time to break out some different things. And I said, you know what? That needle drop really puts us in the same ballpark with dropping the needle on our turntables on our albums. So that's what I was listening to this week. And I have to ask you, Reverend Jeff, and you are still, we are past the holidays, Jeff, but you are still the Ayatollah of rock and roll.
The Ayatollah of rock and roll.
That's yes, right. You are. And so I have to ask you, what records were you listening to this week?
You know, man, I it's been crazy. I've got this big collection of AC. And I have just, what little bit of time I've been able to get into the vinyl, I have just been loving me some AC/DC this week. The very first one that I actually played back to back like 3 times in a row was Dirty Deeds, Done Dirt Cheap. Yeah.
One of my favorites.
This third studio album by the Australian rock band AC/DC. The band's third LP released in Australia and Europe in 1976, but was not released in the US until 1981. That's correct. I never heard this till probably 83, which puts the old Rev at about 9. And hearing I've got big balls, you've got big balls, but she's got the biggest balls of them all, coming out of the old Rev's bedroom at 9 years old, mother was not happy. Let's just put it that way. Yeah, I Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap is probably one of my favorite albums just because the title track and big balls. I mean, who can go wrong with both of those things?
You can't go wrong with that.
No, sir. Next up, of course, is who doesn't have a copy of Back in Black? This is kind of like Herb Alpert's Whipped Creamed and Other Delights. You know, everybody's got one of those. Well, everybody's got a Back in Black. Back in Black. That's right. 7th studio album, Australian rock band AC/DC. It was actually produced by Robert John Mutt Lang, if you can believe that. The album was released 25 July 1980. Now, being their seventh studio album, technically it was their sixth release in the U.S., so that's what got kind of crazy when they released Dirty Deeds after Back in Black. We had arguments. I mean, we really had arguments about which album came before what, and we didn't really understand that things got released before the U.S. because we thought we were special. The whole thing was recorded over 7 weeks in the Bahamas. And in April 1980, the area was hit by a tropical storm at the time, making the sessions difficult. It was composed by Johnson Angus and Malcolm Young. The musical content consists of hard rock style numbers. That's right. Lang demanded perfection in the band's recordings. Just be like the bloody Beatles. And oh God, those producers are screaming it constantly. Just be like the bloody Beatles. So after we got rid of Back in Black a few times on the old machine there, I pulled in one that people tend to kind of shy away from, and I don't understand why. For those about to rock,
we salute you.
That's right. Now this is the 8th studio album, the band's 7th international release. It was released on November 23rd, 1981, which was actually the second release that year by AC/DC, which was a big deal because we got Dirty Deeds that year, as well as For Those About to Rock, which was kind of confusing. By the summer of 81, Back in Black's AC/DC's 6th international release was nothing short of a phenomenon. And it was the band's biggest album by far, having gone platinum multiple times. That's right. This one doesn't really have a lot on it. For Those About to Rock and Let's Get It Up, both hit the singles charts. But past that, sadly, it just didn't go all that
But,
far.
I actually, I went to the record store and bought that album on its release date. And I actually really enjoyed it. And, of course, I've always loved the title track.
Yeah, well, the title track is always, it's almost an anthem.
It is. You're right.
It's nearly rock and roll's not noise pollution, but it's, For Those About to Rock, We Salute You is definitely very close to an anthem.
The cannons going off, and it's just spectacular.
Let's take a moment here to say hello to our fellow people out there in the chat room today.
Hello,
let's see who's there.
Human beings.
Mr.
Hello,
Rod
people
Dupree.
of Earth.
He's always in the place to be. Greetings, sir. He's out there swinging a tool for us tonight, as well as Ken. Oh, God. Every time I get that in my nose, man, that name comes out. Hey, glad you're enjoying Vinyl Power with us, as well as Lance Windsor. He's floating around out there.
We got some loyal watchers, don't we?
With 34 was able to check in today. Howdy,
34.
Sir. Glad you are with us as well. By the way, your edition of Vinyl Power is the fastest watch episode that we have filmed so far.
Nice. So, that's very nice. And he also is a big AC/DC fan as well.
Well, there you go.
So I know he's enjoying this.
I got to tell you there, partner, it is that time of the show when I ask you, what's the Epic's music of the week this week, man?
Well, I wanted to continue on, obviously, with what I was already talking about. At some point, I'll get eclectic and just go all over the place. But at this point, it's going to be the 1972 release, which most people consider their masterpiece. And that is, yes, Close to the Edge. Again, on the Steven Wilson remixed Blu-ray. And like I said, they all come with these nice booklets, which not only have photos, and I'll tell you what, I mean, I can see pretty well, but you better get your magnifying glass out to read that.
The weird thing about all of this is I've never even owned a Blu-ray player, so I wouldn't even know how to hook it into my I don't even have a 5.1 system to listen to.
Yeah, well, you know what though,
I would have to build a 5.1 up to be able to go this route, but I've been thinking about it. There's plenty of low end or not low end, but low budget 5.1 systems.
No, it's not expensive. In fact, you'll probably spend more building a nice vintage system, which you now have, than you will just putting together a. And the good thing is, though, like with my system, even though mine is not the vintage like you have, which is definitely more specific for vinyl records, you can easily put together a system which will still let you enjoy both.
Right.
So One of the great things is the artwork has always been great on this, very fantasy artwork, and the song like "Close to the Edge." My gosh, it's so small on here that I can't actually just read it without more light. But I think it's like it checks in at like 23 minutes or something. And for most people, this is their progressive masterpiece record. Like I say, for me, I sort of like the previous two just a little bit better myself. Just the fact that they're a little more song based with songs like Starship Troopers and Roundabout,
Right.
The Heart of the Sunrise. Where this one is a little more eclectic, a little more experimental. But it's a fantastic record, and because it's such an iconic progressive masterpiece for those who enjoy progressive music, not all that many people do. It is kind of a side genre, really.
It's hard to listen to at times.
It is for some. And let me tell you, when I was younger, all I wanted was Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Pink Floyd, Cream, Jimi Hendrix. And it really took me, and I couldn't stand jazz. I could not take jazz music. And it took me a long time. And you know what? I owned some of these records and they barely made it to my turntable. I knew they were good records and I liked the songs, but I was just more into the blues based, like Zeppelin, like, bands which had come from that type of music to start with, more than the symphonic with the classical overtones, jazz overtones that progressive had. It took me a long time before I got into jazz. And when I got into jazz, it opened the door for me to get into progressive at the same time. So the jazz and progressive came to me, and I started getting a much higher appreciation for the progressive bands. And I realized I could see why not many people were going to be as into, say, a band like Yes, or especially King Crimson. That's really more out there on the progressive end.
Yeah, when you see a time signature like 64/38,
yeah, that's exactly.
And you look at it and go, "What the?"
And I mean, you're brought up on the Beatles, you're brought up on Elvis, and it's 4/4, it's 4/5, and these things.
There's three chords. There's three refrains, and
3-part choruses, exactly. 3-part choruses, and you know what? It's easy for your brain to lock into that, and it feels good. It makes you happy. You feel good.
Every hit song is exactly the same, and there's a YouTube video out there that proves it.
Yeah, no, you're right. No, you're absolutely right. That is exactly correct. And I'll tell you what, it takes a little bit of rewiring in the brain to finally get to the point where you hear this and you go, wow, I really enjoy that, instead of going, that's odd. I don't know if I like that or not. I mean, I guess they're great musicians, but it's really kind of odd. Another band that I'd put in there with that would be Dream Theater. I have many, many, many friends in the music community who, of course, they love Porcupine Tree. That's why many of us are such good friends. It's also their favorite band, and Porcupine Tree is basically a progressive band. And they love Opeth, who's kind of a progressive death metal band from Sweden. So we tend to, Riverside from Poland, we tend to like a lot of the same bands. But at the same time, when they hear Dream Theater, who really is a progressive metal band from New York, they tend to shy away from it, because really Dream Theater is more about how great the musicians themselves are, more than how great the music is. So I totally get that. But with Yes, and especially Yes over King Crimson, I would put that to rest. Yes came out with great songs. So not only were they progressive, they were easy to follow, and they just have great songs. I mean, if you can't get into Starship Troopers, or if you can't, you can't. But I mean, Starship Troopers and like I said, songs like Heart of the Sunrise and The Fish. My gosh, I wish I could read these, but they're so tiny written on here because they try to do it like a record. And in this, it's actually kind of dim lighting in here. I can't hardly see the small writing to read off all of the songs to you. But Roundabout and such, you've heard them on the radio. So that's the difference, I would say, would be with Yes and the progressive genre. a little bit more than bands like Genesis, who, of course, Genesis during the Peter Gabriel days were obviously a very progressive band before Phil Collins took over.
Right.
And you know what? And I may not like the music as much with Phil Collins. It's still good music. I like the progressive, the heavy progressive in the 70s. But I'll tell you what, they made their money with Phil Collins in those pop records.
Exactly.
That's where the money was. So again, like I say,
he's still making money.
Yeah, it's still making money. For the most part, people's, when you hear music and
they want to hear them say four chords. They want to hear those
time signatures.
Yeah.
It's easy. It feels good. It makes you happy. And
you can snap your finger to it. You can tap your toe to it. You can dance to it. You
don't usually do that with progressive. You're not.
No, you kind of sit back and have a drink or smoke a doobie and think about life while you're listening to Yes. I mean, that's what you're really doing.
I know you're exactly right. It is a different experience.
Unless you're in Germany, and you're in a Prague, you're in a Prague club in Germany, then you're in there trying to dance to 64/38. Whatever the hell that is. I've seen it. We've all seen, that guy that's just kind of like hopping on one foot and jiggling his hair. Yeah, he's trying to dance to Yes.
So anyways, I know we went on a bit long about that, but that's what I was
our
into.
Show. We can do whatever the hell we want.
Yes, we can. You're exactly right. But yeah, that's what I was into this week. I dug out the Blu-rays, I dug out the progressive and the Steven Wilson remixes, and I had a good time with it. So I got to ask you, Reverend Jeff, that was my epic for this week. What did you save for us as your epic record for the first day of February in 2018?
My favoriteest AC/DC album.
Yeah, I hear
Highway to Hell. I mean, Mom broke at least 5 copies of this. 2 of them over my head. I don't know how. I mean, she would what? And they would shatter. I mean, just 2 of them on the sidewalk outside like a ninja. They splintered into pieces. I mean, she ran one over with the car, and I believe she set one on fire with her cigarette lighter because
I'm looking at my copy right now because my vinyl of that is actually out. It was recently played. I'm actually looking right at mine, and
I mean,
sure enough, I don't blame your mom. I mean, look at that cover, right?
I mean, she used to take the album cover into church with us and show the pastor what I was listening to. He's like, "You're gonna be on a highway to hell, son. That's the devil's music. I mean, look, the guy has horns in front of his head." Now, we were United Methodist people, so it wasn't all that serious. Yeah. But it is the 6th studio album. Released the 27th of July in 1979, the band's 5th international release. See, this is where it gets all freaking screwy and goobery. By 1978, they had released the 5 albums internationally and toured Australia and Europe extensively. In 1977, landed in America, and with virtually no radio support, became a mass alive following. I mean, dude, they hit the show. I remember everybody, "Oh, you going to the AC/DC?" They're like, "Who?" They're like, "Trust me, get tickets." And everybody did. I mean, they rushed out. They got it. Out of the single chart, we had "Highway to Hell," "Girls Got Rhythm," "Walk All Over You," "Touch Too Much," and "Night Prowler." Yeah, I mean, it was the death of Bon Scott in February of 1980 was when he was found dead. And, he had spent the previous evening drinking heavily in the Music Machine. And, that was, he had passed out, driven home by a dude, and left him in my car and rang his doorbell. I mean, who does that? I don't know. But sadly, that was the day that, AC/DC changed. I'm not going to say they died. I'm just going to say they changed.
No, they definitely did change, right? I mean, of course, we got a great album following that, but it was never the same.
No, definitely not
previous records, yeah.
Much like when what's his name retired from dementia, they changed again, but it's never going to be the same. That's bands change. Players, that's the thing, and it's okay that they change. You can still like them just because they're a little different than what they had once been before.
I completely agree with that.
With that, we're going to play that sad music. That's right. It's time for us to say goodbye to everybody for this week's Final Power, because we got other stuff to do, but we're glad we got to share this with you guys today.
Yes, we are.
You can check us out at Facebook by just simply going the @ symbol, Vinyl Power Podcast. Blam! It'll take you right over there and you click the like button. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Share us with your friends. We very much appreciate all of you guys being out there and those who watch later on. So with that, from my man Kurt out in North Kakalaka land, hey, I hear there's more snow and wintry stuff coming your way. So
fun.
We will see you guys all next week. Keep your vinyl off the floor and your stylus clean. Or your Blu-ray eye clean if you want to go that far this week. Run your cleaning disc. Trust me, it's worth it. But don't use that liquid. That stuff never works.
Don't use the liquid.